Hey guys, the WalterFootball.com After the Dark Show for September 5th, 2024. We're going to be looking at the Week 1 NFL DraftKings slate, posting our picks for the main slate. And if we have time, maybe looking at some of the showdown slates. But we're going to focus on the main slate in the show. Going to look at some ownership projections and talk about what we like at every position. So before we get into that, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. As you can see here, we have a ton of t-shirts here, all reasonably priced. I feel like $17-18 in this economy for high quality t-shirts is a pretty good deal, as I always say. And most importantly, it is September, which means it's Lust Month. So make sure you get your Lust Month t-shirt. I actually had one. I would wear it today, but I gave it to my father-in-law who wore it around the gym, and he got some dirty looks. So if you want to get some dirty looks, you can get this shirt because it is important to spread the word that lust rights are human rights. So it's very important. Also, please consider super chats, super stickers. We had some great ones yesterday from Slew, John Sanders, and Can't Make an Eagle. Also in the past, we had some from Germ, Degeneron, Kevin Kovac. You guys have been so awesome with your contributions. Just really appreciate it. I always say that YouTube ads pay nothing. Really, I can go out on the street and just look for change and do better than YouTube ads. So any super chats, super stickers you guys would want to provide would be really appreciated. Also, you can go to Amazon and buy my books. I have 3 books. This is the most recent one, Jerks of the College Years. I wrote about some weirdos I ran into Penn State over the 6 years. This kind of echoes a section on the site called Jerks of the Week, where I just make fun of people I see at like the gym or my neighborhood. And these are my stories from Penn State. So as you can see, I ran into some strange people. My second book was How the 2020 MVP Was Stolen. It is an expose about how Brett Favre tried to sabotage Aaron Rodgers' 2020 MVP award. So if you want to read a crazy story about that, you can check out this book. But without further ado, we are joined by one of the golf guys, half of the golf guys here. Butters is joining us tonight. Butters, how's it going?
I'm doing really good here tonight. It's definitely feeling like fall. The nights are definitely the days are definitely getting shorter. School started, all that jazz.
Yeah, it's weird where it's still warm during the day, but at night it's freezing, and I'm always up at night. I go to bed at like 5:30, 6 a.m. because I work like a crazy person at night. It's kind of I kind of have to with 2 kids running around during the day. But no, when I go out and walk my dogs before bed at like 5 a.m., it's not like freezing now. I have to put on like sweatpants and a hoodie. On one hand, it kind of sucks that the good weather is going to be going away, but on the other hand, football is here. So in 24 hours, the first game is going to be wrapping up. So can't wait to get into that.
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So I feel like it's too much of a short notice to look at Chiefs Ravens showdown. Maybe we can have some thoughts at the very end about that. But I thought we'd just dive into our week 1 slate. We have a few comments here before that though. Bagley says Walt just pulled off a 4-way trade involving 15 players in my 18 work week. Wow. I might be taking this fantasy football thing a bit too seriously. Yeah, I've never seen a 4-way trade in any fantasy league. That's awesome though. It's really cool. That's crazy that half your league was involved in this trade. Like the other half would be like, wait, was this collusion? Like,
I'm just thinking of Charlie Day right now with the whiteboard, like,
oh my God. Yes. I think that's pretty accurate. Matthias says, did my main draft, and Kenny would be happy to hear I didn't take a quarterback until round 13. Yeah, well done. Well, I wonder who you got, Matthias, and let us know. All right. So as commonly done, we're going to start with the quarterbacks, but caveat is I like to go to receivers after that because the quarterbacks and receivers correlate so well, and then go back to running backs and tight ends, defenses. So I don't know how you want to break this down. Kenny and I just kind of go by tier price-wise. You have Josh Allen at 8K, Stroud 75, Dak Prescott 71, Tua at 7,000. For me, I'm only playing one guy in this range, and really it really depends on what slate I'm doing. I don't like to multi-enter. I like to play like the $100 spy and then just enter to that contest into the main contest just in case. So depending on what you do, it really depends on how you attack this position, I think, because there's one super obvious name. Like if you're playing in a single entry, I feel like there's no reason not to go with this guy. And I'll get to him in a little bit, but if you're playing in in a contest with what's the main slate like? How many people is this? This is the $100 main slate, which is 27,000.
I think it's the $5 is, I think there's a million, or just under a million entrants.
Yeah,
so
it's crazy. So,
and my mindset is always like, if you're playing that, because like, once you start dabbling into that, you really have to start playing the game theory. It's like, you're not going in there playing all the chalky plays, because you're not wanting to duplicate yourself with like 1,000 people. You're not going to win.
Yeah.
If it does hit, you're not going to win anything. You got to really take some hard stands and just say like, oh, okay, I'll play this dart throw and hopefully it works.
Yeah, usually, I mean, if you're in a contest with 1 million people, your thought process should be, all right, what are most people doing, and how can I beat what most people are doing? So, with that in mind, are you playing any of the top guys? Like I said, I only like one guy in this range.
And you said going down to how far?
It's from 8K to 7K, just the top 4 guys.
I would say I have interest in 3 of them, but I haven't started building anything yet. But the odd man out that I don't really have interest actually is Josh Allen. I just think he's too expensive. We've kind of seen like, I'm a trends kind of person, but I also try to keep telling myself not to get too much of a habit of like, watching like what all the past optimals and those sorts of things, because a lot of times, like for instance, last year the optimal had left like 1,700 left on the left 1,700, so you were putting in 48,300, and like so you could have easily jumped up to a different quarterback at that point. But if you're optimal chasing, I mean, it's like pulling a lottery ticket. It might even have better chances of winning the lottery than actually getting the perfect lineup. So don't go chasing after that. Play your rules. Play if you want to stack or do something different, but just go with how you feel. But how I'm feeling is I'm just feeling that Josh Allen is just way too expensive there. Now, I say expensive because week 1, there's always the salaries are always a little bit less. Like Josh Allen right now is 8K. On a regular week, probably like, let's say like week 10, he'd probably be priced at around what, 80, 85, 9K, something like that. So you're getting discounted salary on pretty much everyone that you're playing and everyone that you're going to see. So you have the chance of week 1 and playing some premium players. And so I'll mention that again once we go like into wide receiver, because there's some talk about some 3K guys, and like I don't know if you really need to go down there. But anyways, if I'm looking at salary, I mean, you're already spending 8,000 when you already had the chance of playing some premium players. So right now, I just feel like I'm not going to go up that high. Plus, I don't feel like he's got a premium receiver to throw to on his offense. And so I don't know what he's going to do, if he's just going to attack, if he's going to run around like Lamar Jackson. Okay, I can see that. Then you could probably play him by himself. But I'd rather get like a ceiling play, like for instance, Dak Prescott, who's his offense. His offense is going to be CeeDee Lamb or CJ Stroud. He's going to have 3 or possibly even 4 different, or maybe even 5 different targets that he can throw to. Tua is going to be kind of in the same boat as Dak, where you can play Tyreek or Waddle or those sorts of things. So I just think the ceiling is just much higher with those plays over Josh Allen right now.
Yeah, well, I think, Josh Allen, I think, is kind of safe with his rushing ability to get to like 25 to 30 points. Now, but I think that there are several quarterbacks here who can get to 25 to 30 points like somewhat easily. And so if you go with Josh Allen at his price, I think you have to get like 40 out of him to win. And with that, the receiving core you're talking about, I don't know if you're going to get there. So I'm not playing Allen. I think Stroud's also too expensive in a matchup that's not that easy. Stroud last year against the Colts at 20 fantasy points here in week 2 and 25 here. Like, that's not going to cut it at 7,500. Prescott, Cleveland has the number 1 defense in the NFL, and Dallas has 2 new offensive linemen. So no, Tua, though, I've been talking about this Jaguars-Dolphins game a lot. I think that there's going to be no defense playing this game. Miami's missing two of its best pass rushers. They lost players in free agency. The Jaguars were awful against the pass last year. I think this could be like a 49-42 game. I've been saying that for months now, and I watch it go like 6-3 or something stupid. But it's like that's the NFL for you. But I think Tua is going to be throwing all afternoon, and it's going to be drastically different than what we saw last year from the Dolphins, where they got out to big leads. They sat on the ball in the second half because they had a great defense and a great running game. Now they don't have a great defense, and I don't think they're going to have a running game because they lost their two best run blockers, Connor Williams, now Seattle, Robert Hunt, now Carolina. Like they're not going to be able to run block as well. So I love Tua this week. I love all of his receivers. 7K, I think you can definitely play him. I like one quarterback much more, and it's not as I think Slew was talking to Matthias, but no, do not play Sam Darnold. I know we're talking about getting different. You don't want to be too contrarian. Being contrarian is good. Being completely contrarian, not so good. So Tua is the only play for me at the top here. Then we go to the 6K range. We have Burrow, Murray, Richardson, Lawrence, Cousins, Watson. I like three guys here for sure, including one who I said was the most obvious top play on the slate. Like, can you guess who that is?
Anthony Richardson.
Yes, if you're playing single entry with like 3,000 people and you don't need to be completely different, then I don't see how you get away from him. Like this
play now before he gets hurt.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, like if in fantasy leagues, so Richardson's going like in 12-team leagues, he's going like 5th, 6th, 7th round. We saw him 8th round, one draft, actually 9th round, one draft, but usually 5th, 6th round. If you were to guarantee that Richardson would play all 17 games, he would be, I think, a first-round pick because he would produce like 30-plus fantasy points, like half the slate or half the season, just because of his insane rushing ability. And like all four of these games here, ignore this, like he barely played here, 21, 17, 30. Like these were not full games except for this one against the Rams, and he got banged up in that game. He got injured in every single game last year. So like you said, enjoy him while he's healthy. Against Houston last year, this 17 was in a quarter.
Yeah, I was trying to remember which game that was because it was just like he just went off, and then didn't he go off, get hurt, and then go back in, go off again, get hurt again, or something like that?
Yeah, and then Minshew played the rest of the game, and the Colts destroyed the Texans. It says 31-20 here, but they were up by way more, and the Texans just got some garbage time at the end. Richardson was on his way to annihilating the Texans, and the Texans are they're pretty weak to mobile quarterbacks. Last playoff, they lost to Lamar Jackson, so. And they lost some linebackers this offseason. So, Richardson, I think is the top play on the board. Like, regardless of salary, I'm playing Richardson in single entry. Now, if you're playing in a contest with 1 million people, you probably don't want to play Richardson because, what if he gets injured? What if he just has a bad game? It's possible. But in my single entry spy, I am playing Richardson, like, no question about it. Yeah,
I definitely have an interest in Richardson as well, just for the same tidbits that you were saying there. He just is. We don't know his ceiling, to be honest. He's got one game that's 30 points, and then
he got hurt in that game.
What's that?
He got hurt in that game. He finished it, but he was like limping around in that game.
So I mean, we don't know his ceiling. We don't know what his long-time potential is. So I mean, it's hard to tell. It's almost like he's a rookie right now. If you kind of want to think about it, sure he's got. And one of the other things I think about too is the fantasy points per game that you're showing on there. Don't get caught in that trap because that's all last year. So, for instance, like when you're looking at Josh Allen, you see 26.0 average points. That's all last year. Same with opponents' ranks. That's all last year. So just be very, very careful with that.
Yeah, it's very tempting to see like, oh, this green 28th, or green 26th. That looks like a great matchup, but I mean, a lot has changed. So just keep that in mind for sure. Although some are still accurate, like this Prescott 4th against Cleveland, the Browns should still have a great defense. So As far as the 6K quarterbacks go, Richardson's, like I said, the obvious choice. You want to get different? I think Kyler Murray is a great option. Buffalo lost Matt Milano, so their defense can be a lot worse. I feel like Murray should be able to run all over the Bills. And also have success throwing to McBride. The middle of the field is going to be wide open. So McBride, James Conner in the backfield. I think Murray's going to have a big game. And I talked about the Jaguars-Dolphins game. The other quarterback here, Trevor Lawrence, he could be playing from behind, so he might throw a lot in the second half. I can see him maybe even struggling in the first half and just like lighting up the Dolphins defense in the second half as he attempts to come back and just like that ugly snowflake that you see is going to turn to a flame. So those are the three quarterbacks I like in this range. Who do you like here?
So I definitely have interest as well in Lawrence, like you said, because of that Jacksonville-Miami game. Now I do have one question for you. Do you think Miami, like historically, Miami has just like when they had no defense or had nothing that they could do, all they would do is just consistently blitz. Do you foresee them doing the same thing? And if you do, how is Trevor Lawrence against the blitz? Because I remember, like, for instance, Burrow has been great against the blitz. So when you get a team that blitzes a bunch, like you just play him just because he's just going to go off sort of thing.
Yeah, no, Burrow, the best quarterback in the NFL against the blitz. Trevor Lawrence last year was he actually threw more interceptions than touchdowns when blitzed. So I think that's it's a good observation. Now, I don't know what the Dolphins are going to do specifically in this game, but I imagine that given that they're down Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, like they might just think, hey, we have to blitz, otherwise you're not going to get to the quarterback. So that's a good point. You might see that a lot, but then again, I think there's a good chance the Jaguars fall behind like 14, 17 points in this game. But I think that, like I said, in the second half, Lawrence could just have like the garbage time game of his life and just like throw 4 touchdowns against the Dolphins late. So early on he might struggle, and then against the blitz, and then late in the game it just may not matter when like the Dolphins playing prevent or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also like you mentioned as well on your picks against the spread that Miami's stadium is designed so that the opposing team is always in the sunlight, whereas Miami as a home is in the shade. So that could throw some off too, especially on a very hot game. On a very hot game when you got the sun beating out of you and your opponent and your and that the home team's got cooler weather, got shade and everything like that. That could be a big advantage as well for Miami.
Yeah, it's the John Sanders special. One of our commenters here, he always points that out. So shout out to John. So you like Lawrence as well. Any other thoughts here before we descend into the 5Ks?
Well, New England is just going to be abysmal this year. So, I mean, you could target against them. We do know that Jamar Chase did practice here today, even though it was limited. And one thing to always kind of keep in mind that is if they're practicing, they're probably most likely going to be playing unless there's news that comes out. So I wouldn't think that Jamar Chase is got any setback for not practicing or anything like that. So they could just go out and they could be up 28-0 at the half. But how are they going to get there? So if you think that he's going to just light it up in the air, that's a potential to get some easy points as well. So it's just how much points do you think you're going to get from him?
Right.
So that is certainly, again, attacking New England is probably going to be one thing I'm always going to keep in mind this year. Pittsburgh's defense has kind of came back as well. I'm not a big Kirk Cousins truther at all. I mean, now there's a coaching change. You can't really look at. You're not going to deal with what's his face again, the stash.
Arthur Smith. Well, he's on the other side of this game.
Pittsburgh, so yeah. So, but Pitts is actually limited as well. So that's one receiver down, and Kirk Cousins likes to go to tight ends a lot too. So then that could hinder him as well. Maybe they go on the ground instead. So I would say in this range, I would have to say Lawrence number 1, Richardson, and then probably Burrow. Not so sure about Murray. But again, I would have to rank in those three in that order. No interest in Watson. I think he's done. He might not be. He might not even be the starter by week 5.
I don't know why he's even 6K. Like, who's playing him at 5K? I don't think this guy's just awful.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go into the 5Ks. I think there's like one obvious name here that stands out and I think might be highly owned, but I would not play him necessarily. I kind of wonder, maybe you can guess who that is. But we have some big names here like Caleb Williams, Justin Herbert, Jane Daniels, Mayfield, Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, some starters, and then we get into the lower rung here. Bryce Young's still a starter, and then we get into the backups here. So any cheap quarterbacks standing out to you?
Well, who you're saying that's kind of picking up ownership? I don't understand why either is Baker Mayfield.
Oh, Mayfield's getting ownership?
Yeah, for whatever reason, I'm seeing he's getting some ownership, like around 8 to 10%. I was like, why? But maybe people are still thinking that Washington is abysmal, and so they're still thinking Baker's still getting some run. But the other quarterback I'm thinking that you might be thinking of is Jaden Daniels.
Yes. Yeah. Hold on. Sorry, my wife just texted me. Jaden Daniels. So I think people might be looking him at considering him as like Anthony Richardson light, because he's going to have, well, first of all, he's a young guy. Second, he has immense upside with his rushing ability. And I think that you could play him a lot early in the season. I like him quite a bit as a prospect coming into the NFL. I don't love the matchup, though. I know Tampa has just bad defensive back play from last year, but Tampa usually handles mobile quarterbacks very well, like just the way they play their defense. Now, I know some of that had to do with Devin White being on the defense last year, but they still have Levante David to kind of slow down the mobile quarterbacks. So I think I'd like to wait on Daniels rather than play him and just play Richardson. It's kind of wild that Richardson's only $600 more. Even though it's a different first number here, so it looks cheaper, but it's really not. Like $600 is not a huge deal when you're considering that like Richardson could get to 35 plus, whereas Daniels against this Tampa defense gets to like 25. I'm pretty happy. So like Daniels will be appealing to me in the future, but not so much this week.
Yeah, and we'll get to the wide receivers here as well, but you could stack with Jaden Daniels so cheap because all of his receivers most of his receivers are so cheap. So people are going to just say, oh, I can just stack with them. And I'm just going to go that route. So I can see even if ownership is showing, I don't know, 6 to 8% right now, I think it's going to get much higher as we're getting close to the Sunday when people start actually building and seeing like, oh yeah, I could just do that and play whoever I want. Like that. Right. That's when you can start falling into a trap.
Yeah, and even like stacking someone like Daniels, I feel like you don't even need to do it necessarily. Like I would put McLaurin within this. It's obvious, but I don't think I'd go 2 receivers because if Daniels is going off, he's probably doing it on the ground. So at most I'd want McLaurin, but and we'll talk about Richardson as well. I think there's kind of like an interesting choice to pair with Richardson. So before we move to receiver, is there anything left with the quarterback you want to touch on, or do you want to move on to receiver?
I did have actually one quick question since we're still on the topic of Jaden Daniels. How was their offensive line as compared to when Carson Wentz was there? Because I know when they started having issues with offensive line, that's when Carson Wentz was getting sacked. Like I think there was one game he got sacked 7 times or something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty bad a couple years ago. So with their offensive line, they had some good additions to the interior this offseason where they got Tyler Biadasz and Nick Allegretti from Dallas and Kansas City. I thought there's 2 good additions. They still have this big kind of gaping hole at left tackle where I thought it was going to be Cornelius Lucas there, but it's going to be Brandon Coleman. It's a 3rd-round rookie. I don't know how Coleman's going to play. Maybe he's going to be a standout, and if so, like their offensive line is going to be awesome. But if not, they're going to have some issues on the edge. But I do like their interior at least, so it's not bad. If you're ranking them, they're probably like being bearish on Coleman, they're probably like 15 to 20. I would think right now, probably closer to 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did want to mention Sam Darnold. I could see him getting steamed up as well, just because he's cheap. He's got JJ to throw to. There's stats being thrown around that he's a starting quarterback. He's got all his completions and all of that. I mean, why did the Jets not keep up? I mean, that should be the cue right there of why he was gotten rid of from there as well. So yes, I'm a Packer fan, but even such with that, I'm just not a big fan of Sam Darnold. I think that actually lowers like JJ's ceiling for whatever reason. I think it actually would increase like Aaron Jones's ceiling for whatever reason, just because I'm not going with the hype on him. Not to say that he can't produce. I just don't think he has the ceiling for that. I want to see what your opinions are with that.
I wouldn't play Darnold. I think it's a tough matchup for him. I know the Giants secondary kind of sucks, but they have Brian Burns, they have Kayvon Thibodeau, they have his name always escapes me. The nose tackle that they have there. What's his face? Dexter Lawrence. Like they have a great front, and so I think that they could kind of give Sam Darnold some issues. Like if I'm playing a quarterback from that game, I'm playing Daniel Jones, as ugly as it is, because he can run around. No, it's not ideal. He's coming off a torn ACL. That gives me some pause. But he's only 5,400. He's coming off. He can run, like I said, ordinarily. And Minnesota's defense sucks. So he's going to have Malik Neighbors. He's going to have like a viable number one receiver for the first time in his career. So I don't expect him to play well, but I think I would prefer him over Darnold. I'm not playing either guy. Like I think that there are enough great options to like not be this contrarian, Yeah. But if for some reason you couldn't play Richardson or Lawrence or Tua or any of the other guys you mentioned, I don't think Daniel Jones is that bad of a choice.
There's some also weird trend, or like if you watch, like if you kind of follow like all the optimals that kind of happen throughout the year, you kind of start seeing that like a low owned or kind of a mid owned-ish 5K quarterback somehow just always gets there. And so I always just try to like go down the list and see like, okay, what is one that maybe no one is really talking about and that maybe has like a good matchup or like a good ceiling or someone that can get me like 25, 30 points out of the blue. And when I'm looking down here, the first one actually just kind of comes to my mind is actually Gardner Minshew. I'm going back to, for instance, when that Raiders and Chargers game where it was 63-21 or something like that. And we know that Devontae Adams just absolutely hates the Chargers. Well, if Devontae Adams goes off, how is he going to get there? Well, he's going to get thrown to. So, I mean, if he goes off, that means Minshew is also going off. And at 5,300, it's worth a dart throw play.
Yeah, I feel like if Richardson weren't 6,300 and if he were like 7,300, I think that you could look at the 5K guys, but he's so he's priced so close to these guys. But yeah, I mean, in a contest with $1 million, with 1 million people in there, like, yeah. I mean, anything, almost anything is worth a dart throw, I suppose. I feel like this game is going to be like 13-10. I think it's going to be an ugly grinder, but we'll see. We have some comments here. Let's get to them. Jesse says, check out all those tabs. Bro has never closed the tab. Well, Jesse, you must be new here. This is one of 4 windows I have opened that have, actually, no, 5 windows that I've opened that have at least 40 tabs in them. This one, I think, has 77. I've one with 83. I've one with 44. I've one with like 60 something. I have hundreds and hundreds of tabs. I have closed the tab once or twice.
Oh my gosh.
But no, I know all these tabs I use. I know exactly where everything is, and it's kind of a mess. It's kind of like how my desk is, just like stuff cluttered all over the place, but I know where everything is. And like if like my wife cleans something up for me, I just don't know where it is. She's like, I cleaned it. I'm like, I don't know, I lost it. So that's how I roll, I guess. John says week 1 best DFS Geno Smith versus Denver. I'm building a lineup around him and Tyreek Hill. Geno and DK stack throwing Tyreek and Neighbors. Panthers defense Chuba Hubbard. We didn't talk about Geno Smith. What do you think about him? I feel like this is kind of going to be like a grinded out win for Seattle. I don't think Seattle's going to score like too many points here, but what do you think?
Is that at Denver?
No, it's in Seattle.
It is in Seattle? Okay. I mean, I could see it. I mean, if he's going to get there, you're going to need like DK Metcalf to kind of go off and that sort of thing. So, I mean, maybe this is his last hurrah. Maybe he's willing to kind of go see like this is kind of an easier matchup for him. So, I mean, I could see it. I mean, it's not out of the realm of my possibilities because, again, I always kind of try to find that 5K quarterback and see if maybe it's like, well, if I go down from, let's say, from Anthony Richards down to 5K, what's my benefit for other parts of my lineup sort of thing, where maybe I'm losing this, but I'm gaining this sort of thing. So, I mean, I could see it.
Yeah. I also with DK, you have to worry about Surtain. Not that he's going to cover him every play, but, still an issue.
Unless you want to go Derek Carr, Derek Carr versus Carolina, but
I will never play Derek Carr this year. That offensive line is the worst in the NFL, I think, outside of New England's. Lanky says, "Goat House picks Titans over Chicago." Your thoughts? Yeah, I think the Titans win. I think the Titans win that game. I have that. I love that. I love the Titans this week. And Line says, will Denver Jaleel McLaughlin get decent touches or Vikings Ty Chandler? I messed up. Drafted Chubb, thought he would play week 1. McLaughlin was playing into the third quarter, one of the preseason games, so I wouldn't count on that. You would need Javonte Williams to get hurt. And then Ty Chandler, I think, has a better chance of getting touches, but I think Aaron Jones is going to have that job until he gets hurt. But Jones will get hurt, according to that injury history. So, I wouldn't expect much from either guy in week 1, but Chandler, I think, is the better bet. Plus, the Vikings have a better chance of winning. So like they're a better chance of having the lead and running more. So, I mean, who knows, that could be a blowout. I don't think it will be. I actually think the Giants will win, but if Minnesota could blow out the Giants. And so you might see Chandler, Bryce Young, Canales Magic, bringing up Bryce Young. I like the running game here more for the Panthers. I see this as a low scoring game too. I don't see a reason to get to Young, not in this matchup. The Saints have a good defense. So any thoughts here? So he had 8 against the Saints, and then he had 14. Actually, he won me a GPP here. Bryce Young. It was the 2-game Monday night slate. I won that. It was like the $44 something. I was like the only person to play Bryce Young in that tournament. Like I think everyone played Watson or whoever else or Carr. And I avoided Jamal Williams who got hurt, so I got lucky there. But still, he had like one of his best performances last year was still 14, which is kind of sad. So
I mean, he's got some other weapons kind of around him. Last year was just an abysmal year for him. So I mean, he could turn it around. I mean, it's kind of like I'm kind of treating him kind of as a rookie right now, just because like last year was just. He got like thrown out into the wolves and those sorts of things. So, I mean, we'll see kind of what happens. I may throw like 1 or 2 lineups in for Caleb Williams just because I know my neighbor is a big Bears fan and everything like that. I mean, I could see it. His ownership is kind of trending up, so I can see as a reason why. So I may have a little bit of exposure to Caleb Williams, but it's hard for me to like a rookie quarterback week 1 when you've got so many other options on ownership that's just so on salary that's just so cheap that I'd rather just if I lose I lose, if I lose to that I lose to that sort of thing.
I love Tennessee's defense too much to play Williams. I think they could have a top 5 defense this year. John says I have Purdy and Debo versus the Jets. Justin Herbert and McLaurin on the bench. Who should I start? So I would, Purdy versus the Jets is rough, but then Herbert has dealing with the plantar fascia. So, and he is a tough matchup. Like, it's rough. I think I'd go Purdy, but I don't like either option. Debo at least gets to avoid Sauce Gardner, but then he gets one of the other good Jets cornerbacks. So it's tough. I think I would actually go McLaurin over Debo.
I agree with you there.
Yeah. So yeah, McLaurin and then Purdy, I suppose, but I don't like either quarterback option. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not high on Purdy this year, but I would trust him a little bit more than Herbert just because we don't know really what's going on with his feet. I mean, like plantar fasciitis is just very similar to kind of like a back injury. Once it starts lingering and festers and everything like that, it's just you just feel uncomfortable, and then you're just always thinking about it, and then your mentality is not on the game anymore; it's on your injury.
Right, exactly. All right, let's go to receivers. So, CeeDee Lamb, the most expensive guy, Tyreek Hill. I have a feeling he's going to be the highest owned guy. Seems like everyone's going to try to jam Hill into their lineups. Then you have Jefferson at 8,400. And then a little bit lower, you have Chase, Adams, Evans, Marvin Harrison Jr., Nico Collins. So, what are you feeling about these top guys? Are you going to try to jam in Hill, or are you going to look at someone else?
I mean, Tyreek Hill is my one of one if in any snake draft here this year. So I definitely want to have exposure to that, especially with the fact that if it's going to be a high scoring game, I think they're going to funnel through Tyreek Hill. So I'm fine eating that ownership. But again, it's going to cost you. But again, 8,700 is still too cheap for his ceiling. I mean, he could be 9,500 or even 10,000, and I mean he could still potentially get there. So I mean his ceiling is just so high that it's hard not to fade. It's really hard to fade him. So I get why people want to go for that. And actually I took a look at the last couple of years of optimals, and he's been optimal 2 out of the last 3 years. So if you're following trends, that could be an option for you as well too. So I'm not as high again on Justin Jefferson just because I talked about the quarterback situation. So, but I mean he's got a decent matchup as well. So I can see where that's kind of coming from. He doesn't have Hawkinson right now or they don't have Hawkinson right now in that offense. So he's going to be kind of funneled. But Aaron Jones is actually a very good addition to their team as well. He could be catching passes as well from Sam Darnold, so he could eat away from production as well. So I can see, if you're between the two, I would pick Tyreek over Justin Jefferson. I'm not worried about Jamar Chase's limited practices. I feel like if he's going to play, he's ready to go, sorts of thing. But again, he could just light up. That offense they could be sitting their starters by halftime. Who knows? So it's hard to say with what you want to do with Chase, but you could be a very good pivot play high up there. And then CeeDee Lamb, they're going to be kind of funneling as well. It says out right now. It says out, so I mean maybe that will scare some people off, but he should be playing in that game. So yeah, it'll be interesting because it'll be CD versus what's his name? It'll be a revenge game for Amari Cooper. So I mean,
okay.
So maybe they both want to showcase each other. Who knows?
Yeah, the problem is like Dallas is just not going to be as good as they were last year. They lost Tyron Smith, they lost Tyler Biadasz, and they're going against Cleveland's defensive line. So I don't have no interest there. I like Jefferson quite a bit here. I talked about how bad the Giants cornerbacks are, and Jefferson's not really impacted by the quarterbacks that he has at his disposal. Like, you look at 2 of the last 3 games here, 29 and 39. And that was with Nick Mullins, or I believe. So if he could produce with Nick Mullins, he could produce with Sam Darnold. So I have faith that Jefferson could do it. And if you're playing in a million person tournament and everyone's playing Tyreek Hill, I would just go to Jefferson and you save $300. Now, if you want to be, if you're playing in a smaller tournament like the SPY, $100 SPY with 3,000 people, I think Hill is ideal. So Hill is my play in that tournament. I think it's interesting to try to jam both in. I think you can do it. I build a lineup that way, and I'm pretty happy with it. I have like Hill, Jefferson with Richardson, and then some cheap guys. So you can do it too, and they have the highest ceiling. I think they're the only guys I would play above 7,200. Because if I'm doing a 100-hour spy, Nico Collins, some interest here at 7,000. Just because the Colts outside cornerbacks aren't that good. So I think there's a chance for a decent matchup here. And I believe he had a good game against the Colts. Yeah, he had 37.5 fantasy points in week 18 against the Colts.
He's so talented though, too.
Yeah,
his ceiling is so high up there. So
yeah. But the thing is, now there's Stephon Diggs. Now Tank Dell is healthy, so you have to worry about that. But Dell has the tougher matchup of the three. In this game against the Colts slot cornerback. But the outside guys should do well here. So Collins or Diggs, I'm pretty happy to play either. Let's go to the 6K guys. You have Keenan Allen, he has a heel injury, I think, but he was limited. And you have Pittman, Diggs, Olave, Moore, Cooper, as you mentioned him earlier. Waddle's interesting as a pivot from Hill. Metcalf, talked about him as well. Higgins, if Chase doesn't play, I feel like everyone's to play Higgins. And then Drake London, the 6K range. Anyone pique your interest here?
I know I'm not interested in Stephon Diggs at all this year. I feel like he's going to be kind of the same thing as what he did at Buffalo. Just talk his talk, get upset, and just not produce. I feel like you're going to have Nico Collins and Tank Dell is going to be your. I mean, if you put Stephon Diggs as your you line him up as your wide receiver 3 in the slot, okay, maybe, but I don't see. I see him just being the forgotten man on that offense, to be completely honest. So I'm not very high on Diggs at all. I do like Pittman to kind of go around with Richardson. I mean, that's probably going to be pretty popular as well. Yeah, I'm seeing about anywhere between like 12 and 15% on him right now. So Pittman will be pretty popular again, and that's coming from Anthony Richardson wanting to stack that offense. So I get what's going on there. Plays that aren't going to be, or some low-owned plays in this range that do seem of an interest as well would be, again, Amari Cooper. They could just be showcasing each other. I mean, it's a revenge game for him. Is it at? Oh, yes, it is at Cleveland. It is in Cleveland as well. He seems to be always playing better when he's at home and not away. So, I mean, that could be also another factor as well, that because it's a home game for him, he could be producing. And you've also got Watson under center as well. So do you trust Watson to give him the ball? That sort of thing. DK Metcalf, we kind of talked about that with Geno Smith as well. So, I mean, DK Metcalf is very, very talented. You've got T. Higgins. I mean, if you're a little bit worried about Jamar Chase, which I'm not, T. Higgins is always an option, especially with Burrow. But again, they could be pulling starters by halftime, so a little bit of caution there. I am not a fan of Jaylen Waddle. I think he's part of a pyramid scheme. I think that he's a decoy out there, and I would much rather spend up for Tyreek Hill than Waddle. I know you have different opinions with that as well, but I think that the more ownership going that way, the better, because I'm not going to be playing him.
I like Waddle. I would rather play Hill here, but I think it's an interesting pivot. If you think everyone's going to own Hill, like Waddle's a way to get different, I suppose. But then again, you have to look at ownership. Maybe everyone's thinking that, and they go to Waddle. So it's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Another play down here as well as Drake London, but he's going to be super popular because his salary is way too cheap for his potential as well. He's got a new quarterback that's willing to throw it out. Even though I'm not a big fan of Kirk, I can see the reason why to play Drake London. Again, he's way too cheap for a ceiling.
Yeah, I agree. It is a tough defense though, and these guys have never played with each other. like even in the preseason. So it's tough to expect them to light it up right away. Which I guess they could do. I mean, there is practice and stuff. So Cassandra asking, should we be fading or playing Travis Kelce on or around September 28th? Asking the important questions here. My heart was absolutely shattered into a million pieces today when I heard the news that their relationship might be real. I thought they were like Romeo and Juliet, like they were destined to be together. And actually, that's not Romeo and Juliet. Whatever analogy you want to come up with. I was heartbroken. Your thoughts? Want to pour one out for Travis and Taylor here?
Nope.
All right, fair enough. John says the lineup for DFS week 1 million. Gino, Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker. I don't know if I would do that. Hubbard, Tyreek, Metcalf, Addison, Pitts, Neighbors, Panthers defense. I mean, look, I guess you could do that. Like, it's a weird flex. Sometimes that does happen. I actually do like just pairing the quarterback, the running back. Just feels like Kenneth Walker doesn't catch that many passes to warrant that. But like if Gino throws a touchdown to Kenneth Walker, you're looking great. So I guess I'm not opposed to it. Everything there looks fine. Pitts is banged up, so watch for that. Outside of that, looks pretty good. I think that looks like a viable lineup. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think if you're pairing your quarterback with a running back, it's got to be a very big receiving running back, like for instance, like a McKinnon, or when Austin Eckler was back with the Chargers, because we don't know how he's going to be utilized as much during at Washington as well. But I don't know if I would pair Gino with Kenneth Walker there. I'd probably find a different option at that point. Either change your quarterback or change your running back. But I can see what you're doing there as well, especially with the news that Addison's going to. Minnesota's not really concerned about Addison. I'm still not sure what to take with Pitts, but I think it's fine. I think you're definitely avoiding some ownership as well going that route.
I think I'd be okay with Walker and Gino together in like the 4:00 slate, just because there are fewer options. And like when you get like the 3-4 games, like some weird lineups tend to win. I don't think I'd play this on the main slate, but like I said, like weird things happen. If they have Walker as a bigger role in the receiving game, like that's a way to get ahead of the game. So you could be onto something there. So I wish you luck, John. I hope you, if one of us doesn't take it down, I hope you do. So all right, let's get to the 5K range. You have Neighbors here. I feel like everyone's going to play Neighbors. I could be wrong, but he like stands out so much.
Mm-hmm.
You have Godwin, Ridley, Hopkins, Pickens, McLaurin. We touched on him, and I can get on Dell is another big name who stands out. Like I said, he has a tougher matchup because the Colts play well against slot receivers usually. No other big names. Like, you two Buffalo guys here, 5,100 and 5,000. I thought that was kind of interesting. But anyone in the 5K range stand out?
Well, Terry McLaurin is going to be, like you said, Terry McLaurin and Neighbors are going to be very, very highly owned. I mean, and also Chris Godwin too, just way too cheap. But again, you're going to see a lot of this here this week one, where one thing to be aware with chalk, especially with week one, is you can play chalk. It's okay, but you can't play all chalk. And again, people get confused at what chalk really means. It's not if you get down to, for instance, when we get down to like the 3K and the 4K, if you find someone down in that level that's 5% owned and everyone else is around you is a 1% or less, that's chalk. If you have kind of some guys right now where you've got McLaurin and you've got Godwin and then you've got Neighbors, if you have no one else around them, that wouldn't be really, really chalk, because it's just everyone's kind of going around them, and that's kind of okay chalk. But you have some other plays around them that no one's going to be playing, like a Calvin Ridley, or you're going to have like a George Pickens or a Cortland Sutton. Those sorts of plays, like those are going to be forgotten people around those salary prices. So like if you're building and you're around that way, take one of those plays and pivot to one of those low-end plays, and that could make you go from winning $10 to $100 easily if they go off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely a good strategy to try to pivot off these high-owned plays. I do think McLaurin looks great, though. Tampa, like I said, horrible in their secondary last year. So I will be playing him in the $100 spy. Khalil Shakir, I think, is interesting, or at least he was before. There's positive news on Curtis Samuel that he practiced fully on Wednesday. So a little less interested in him than I was earlier when I wrote up my DraftKings picks, which is on the site. So I think he has some potential. Arizona secondary is a disaster. So at least their cornerbacks are. Safeties are good, but yeah, the cornerbacks are awful. All right, so with 4K guys here, I mentioned Samuel. Looks like he will be playing unless he suffers a setback or something. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Lad McConkey might be a name that stands up. Brian Thomas Jr., who's taken in the third round of our fantasy draft on Monday, inexplicably. The same guy who did that drafted 2 quarterbacks in the first 6 rounds. So he drafted a second quarterback before a second running back. So I don't know if I'd follow that strategy, but we have some other names here like Michael Wilson might stand out. Darno Mooney's I think a little interesting. He had a great year 3 years ago and hasn't done anything since, but now he's with a good quarterback. So we'll see. I think he has potential. Wan'Dale Robinson might be the forgotten man there, and now there's gonna be a lot less attention on him. Roma Dunze, I feel like everyone's gonna play him because everyone's drafting him in the 5th round of fantasy drafts for some reason. So there's some names that stand out. We could even go to the 3K guys. Some guys I have cheaply. In addition to Mooney, there are 3 guys in the 3K range that I like. The first one is Greg Dortch. He plays in the slot. He's going to have that job full time now that Rondale Moore is gone. When he's had a chance, he's been productive, and the Bills secondary is not nearly as good as it used to be. So I think he's kind of interesting. Adonai Mitchell. So I was talking about ways to maybe get different with Anthony Richardson. Everyone's going to play Pittman, like you said. But Mitchell's very intriguing because he's going to play in the slot with Josh Downs injured. And he got more targets than Pittman in their preseason game where all the starters played. He's a super talented guy, 2nd-round pick. And he's 3,800, so he's you don't need him to do much for him to hit. So and the last guy I like in this range is Andre Yoshevas. If Jamar Chase doesn't play, Andre Yoshevas I think looks good. He had 20 fantasy points here in week 18. I know the backups were playing, but he's a hard worker. He's been when he's had the chance. He's done well. He's a big guy. He can get a touchdown. It's only 3,000, so you don't need for him to do much for you to hit with him. So, what are your thoughts on the cheap receivers this week?
I have a pivot to him actually, and that would actually be Trent Irwin.
Okay.
Just because every time that there's been an injury or someone's been out as a wide receiver on the Bengals, he will consistently give you double-digit points. So, 3,900, if he gets you 14 points, you're fine. That's great for 3,900.
Yeah. Anyone else that you like in this lower range?
I'm a little bit skeptical. And, again, I'm looking at trends, but here's my opinion. When it comes to, especially with week 1, where everyone has kind of this lower salary, you can kind of play whoever you want, or kind of in between that. It's the last 3 years, the only 3K or the 3K range receiver that you saw in the optimal was Puka, and Puka became this DFS darling. And so my opinion here, and you can take it with a grain of salt, is if you think that there's some guy down here that's just going to be this whole season-long fantasy darling, play him. And then just go nuts with it. If you don't have that feeling with any of them, just don't even go down that range, because you can organically make lineups that have better ceilings or better potential than trying to go down in that range. However, if you're wanting to go the route of playing CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill, I get it. You're gonna have to go find those value plays.
Wasn't I thought Tank Dell was he was 3K for a while too, wasn't he? He was a rookie. Maybe I'm misremembering. But I do remember that he was kind of cheap too. I think like I played him for a while.
What's it say on there? Let's see, Tank. Usually they say their salaries.
Oh yeah, I could just look it up. So yeah, maybe I'm misremembering. Let's
Yeah,
see.
week one, 2, and 3 using the 3K.
Yeah, he quickly jumped up to 4K there. So yeah, I was playing him here early. I was definitely ahead of the game with Tank Dell. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll try to identify someone in the 3K range who can kind of break the slate. Like that's a way to get ahead of the game, I think.
Yep.
And I think Adonai Mitchell could be that guy. Like he's Tank Dell wasn't even a second round pick. He was a third round pick, I believe. So Adonai Mitchell, second round pick, super talented, like I said.
You've got Noah Brown now on Washington, so
yeah, I mean, I think I'd go with the other Brown, De'Ami Brown over Noah Brown. I think if you want Luke McCaffrey, I think he has a chance. I feel like I don't know. With that offense, there's just so many guys. I feel like Daniel's just gonna like lock in on McLaurin, but I don't know. I think one of those guys could do it. It could be Noah. It could be or De'Ami. It could be McLaurin or McCaffrey. Just don't know. It's an interesting situation for sure. I think Patrick produces or gets in the starting line with Detroit. He's not on the slate because he's with the Lions now. I think Patrick's sort of interesting if he ascends the depth chart there eventually. Not now though.
If you want to get really interesting, you could pair Josh Allen with MVS because now MVS is with Buffalo.
No thanks. I don't have enough MVS in my life. I'm ready to move on.
Or you can. Well, if you want to go in the 4K range and you want to play Quentin Johnston and see if he can turn that around, but I think he's going to drop every long pass he's going to get. However, I still like Rashid Shaheed, but he might get some ownership. But again, you said you don't really like that playing against that defense. So,
well, the problem with Shaheed is that he's a deep threat, and for a deep threat to go off, you need your offensive line to protect. Obviously, you need the quarterback to have time to throw the deep ball. But the Saints have the worst or second worst offensive line in the NFL. Definitely the worst in the NFC. So, I just feel like Derek Carr's just not going to have time to throw to Shaheed. Now, he might have like one or two big games this year, but I just don't see – I really don't see it from him this year. I wish the circumstances were better for him, but they're not, sadly. So,
you do have Gabe – I understand that. You do also have Gabe Davis at 4,500. So I mean, if you're wanting to play that Miami or Jacksonville stack, you have a loaned option. You probably have a loaned option at that point as well too.
Yeah, Mike Lachine from NFLRoughDraft.com called him the bill collector because he comes around once a month. Which is a brilliant nickname, and obviously he played for the Bills before too. So it works both ways. It's always fun to play him because like right away if your lineup's going to do well, because it's always like the first quarter of the game where he just catches a long touchdown and you're like, okay, it's gonna be one of those days where just Gabe Davis goes nuts, but then you're like, in other weeks it's just a big fat zero. So it could be Gabe Davis's week. It might not be, but I mean he's always a fun guy to play in the $1 million tournament, because if he goes off, you'll automatically have a chance to win. I would say with him, let's just look at ownership. Like if he's highly owned relatively wise, don't play him. If no one's on him, then you can play him. That's how I would approach it.
I could see if he was like 3,500, he would be a lot more owned, but at 45, I don't think people are going to go down there. Go to him.
Yeah, I agree. So Detective Dirty says, just found this doing any cash lineup advice picks. So yeah, play Richardson, play all the chalk, play Richardson, play Hill, play who else is chalky this week? McLaurin, play a running back who's chalky running back. Do you have ownership on hand?
Let's see here for wide receiver.
Well, it doesn't matter, whatever position. Running back or receiver. Just play all the chalk. While Butters looks that up, I'll talk about some other comments. John says Wandale Robinson. Yeah, he's someone who could play, I suppose. He says tomorrow I like Isaiah Likely as a cheap sleeper. He is in one of my two lineups. I actually clicked twice by accident in the showdown, so I have two lineups instead of one. So I usually only play one, but Likely is in one of my lineups. I like him as a cheap sleeper for sure. And then John says, dump off Derek. Only guy from Saints Sport taking is Kamara in PPR. Kamara might be highly owned too. So Kamara is another guy you can consider in cash lineups. Do you have that ownership?
For why? Well, you're definitely playing Tyreek if you're playing chalk.
Right.
Probably Drake London as well. Let's see here. And Richardson. I don't want to say any running backs here just yet because we're going to get into that here. But Terry McLaurin, Godwin. Oh, Deontay Johnson. Who else is down here? Probably, what was it? Lad McConkle.
Oh man, really? He's highly owned. He hasn't even played with the quarterback yet. I don't know.
Yeah, but he's getting a lot of hype because there's no one to throw to on the Chargers.
I like Palmer better. I'd play Palmer over him. Maybe that's the pivot to make in the 4:00 games, the 4:00 slate. All right, let's get to the running backs. So we can talk about some chalky guys here. I think Kamara will be one of them. But anyway, there are three guys over 7K. You have Jonathan Taylor, 7,800, which I think is like a pretty reasonable price for the top guy on the slate at the position. I know that like a lot of the top guys aren't here. Like McCaffrey plays Monday night. Breece Hall plays Monday night. What else am I missing? Saquon Barkley plays on Friday. Josh Jacobs plays on Friday. Jahmyr Gibbs plays Sunday night. Kyron Williams plays Sunday night. So you're missing a lot of the running back talent here that you normally see. But I think Taylor kind of belongs in that range, and so he's only 7,800. So if I wasn't going to play Richardson, I think he's a good pivot because who knows? It could be like Taylor scores 4 rushing touchdowns in this game, and Richardson doesn't get in the end zone. Like that could definitely happen. So if you're looking to get different, Taylor it could be a way to go. I think Bijan I think might be the highest owned of the top running backs, but I would not play him. Just because it's against the Steelers, who are good defense. ATN, I don't like. In 6K range, you have James Cook. I think it's just way too expensive at 6,900. Achan, I think people might have member berries about him just going off last year, but like I said, the run blocking is not there. Kamara's going to catch a lot of passes, I think, but the Saints just won't do anything offensively this year. Mixon is a tough matchup against the Colts, even though it says 28 there. Aaron Jones, not a great matchup either. Raheem Mostert, like I said, no interest. I really don't like any of these top running backs until we get to the 6,200 range with James Conner against Buffalo. Remember Buffalo missing Matt Milano. Kenneth Walker, we talked about him. And then I think that's about it. And then I like some guys in the 5K range, but really I don't like much at running back this week. Of 7,800 to 6,000, who are you looking at?
Well, Rashid White is definitely going to be very, very popular against Washington. One thing that it's also kind of been a little bit of a trend too is chalky running backs seem to get there, but chalky wide receivers not so much. So, I mean, if you're playing like the Millie Maker, you could consider going the route of, okay, I'm going to play my not worry about ownership in running back, and then I'll have to make pivots then in wide receiver 1 or 2 or those sorts of things. So I'm not really too concerned about ownership in running back just for that theory. Again, it could be completely wrong, but I've just kind of seen that as kind of a trend. However, I actually do have some interest in Travis Etienne, because I kind of like an interesting stack of Tua, Tyreek, and then bringing back with ETN as just kind of a way that what if Jacksonville kind of goes on a thought where maybe they do get ahead, and if they do get ahead, then they're probably going to be running the ball more because they want to get the ball out of the hands of Tua. And also ETN can catch passes as well. So he could eat up that offense in that game. If it's high scoring, anyone is really live. So, I mean, that's one way to kind of get you different is that instead of just playing all receivers, you could play a running back within that stack. So I kind of like that idea as well.
Yeah.
But again, that's going to soak up a lot of your salary as well because you're going to have a high-priced wide receiver, a high-priced running back, a high-priced quarterback. So you're going to have to find value wherever you're going. So another pivot then could also be Mozart or Achan as well on that on that offense. So really, anyone is kind of live really in that game. I feel. I'm not very high on Joe Mixon this year. I feel like I didn't see him do really well with the kind of towards the end of his career at Cincinnati. So I feel like he's kind of just going to show this kind of the same signs at Houston as well. I think your game plan is going to be in the air, not on the ground on that game, on that offense. So I'm not very high on Joe Mixon. But I do like Aaron Jones because, again, I'm not very high on Justin Jefferson, but I do think that Aaron Jones is, again, I'm a Packer fan, but however, I do feel that Aaron Jones is kind of a generational talent when he's healthy. So he's healthy right now, so I would be kind of scared to play against him right now. But then again, you said that's not really a good defense to be playing against, so I can see your point of maybe not this week considering him. Other than that, in the 6K and up, James Conner has always kind of been a cowbell with Arizona, so I could see kind of deciding going with James Conner, and he's going to not be very owned, so that could be kind of an option there if you want to play against depleted Buffalo defense as well. So that's kind of who I'm seeing in that range.
Mm-hmm. James Conner, that whole situation, Week 18, broke my heart. I told the story before. I had this lineup with it's Week 18, so I had like Carson Wentz stacked with Davis Allen. So it's a weird lineup. I had James Conner as a starting running back, and I was listening to like some shows as I was preparing for the games. And some people are saying, "Oh, James Conner is going to be the highest owned player on the slate." And I'm like, "Oh man, I gotta get out of this." So I pivoted from James Conner, who scored 33 DK points. I went to Zamir White, who did not do nearly as well. It was a 16, so not too bad. But still, it was a difference of 17 points if you can do the math there. And that 17 points cost me $60,000 because I would have won the SPY. Instead, I got like 8th, I think, and that was not $50,000. So it would have been $50K from the SPY. It would have been $10K in the main slate, which I would have entered the same lineup. So in hindsight, I should have kept Connor in the SPY and switched to White in the main contest to get different. But that goes to what you were saying, that running backs who are highly owned have a better chance of hitting than receivers who are highly owned. And I think that makes a lot of sense because there's a lot less variance with the running backs. The running backs can get the ball. Like the play callers can just call plays to give them the ball. Whereas receivers, like it's much tougher to do that because, the opposing team could double, the quarterback could suck, there's all these variables with receivers. So I think you're right on the money there. However, it's interesting that you said Rachaad White is going to be highly owned. I could see that. I just think that this is kind of like indicative of people not paying attention because maybe they think Washington's a great matchup. I really don't think so. I think Washington's going to be a pass funnel defense this year with their secondary just being so bad. But they signed Bobby Wagner. They signed Frankie Louvu. They have their 2 stud defensive tackles. Like, feels like they're going to do really well against the run this year. So I would not play Rachaad White. I think that would be a mistake. And maybe that's the way to get contrarian at running back there.
It does seem really weird that both Rachaad White and possibly Baker Mayfield would both be highly owned. And maybe that's just information that I'm seeing way too early in the week. But it would seem very, very weird if like both of them are very highly owned. It's like, what are you going to do with that? I mean, he's not just going to dump off passes to Rachaad White the entire time. He's going to have to throw the ball, or someone's going to have to produce, and it just seems like a not correlated stack, in my opinion.
Yeah, actually, don't mind Mayfield in the 4 o'clock slate. Pair him with Godwin, and then try to run it back with McLaurin, I suppose. But yeah, I think that's how I would attack the 4 o'clock slate, which I do play. Like they usually have like a $33 or whatever. I just do that. John,
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to make one more point as well, and I'll credit Big T from Run Pure Sports. That's always been saying this too. That how many times do you see this bomb play go off, and then pass interference happens, and then they're off in the one, and then they're running back. Then there's a goal line run back at the one, and then they vulture the touchdown. It happens all the time. So I mean, you got to kind of consider that as well. That's kind of the same thing, kind of going back with Mozart and Achan, where what if Tyreek has he has a 100-yard play, and then it's a pass interference, and then now it's just ran in for a 1-yard touchdown. I mean, it happens all the time.
Yep. No, yeah, that definitely happens. So it's one of the frustrating things about DFS. John says the Bills are starting a zombie at safety. Start James Conner. Yes, I will be playing Conner in all my lineups. I think it's a great matchup. So let's get to the 5K range. As I said, there are some names that really stand out here. Tony Pollard, for example. Chicago does not have a good run defense. Pollard looks electric. Like he looks like the running back from 2022 and prior. So he dealt with a broken foot last year, coming off of that January injury in 2023. So he looks back, and he played every single snap with the Tennessee first string offense on the first drive, and then Spears came in right away on the second drive, and then Pollard came in for him. So like Pollard is going to be the feature back there. They paid him a lot of money. I wouldn't be concerned with Spears. I like Pollard quite a bit. He's really cheap at 5,900. What he started last year? Last year he started at 7,500. So you're getting like a huge discount with him. So he's definitely on my radar. I'm playing him. Another guy I like is Javonte Williams here. Seattle is not a good run defense. Now you might be behind here. Seattle might get out to a lead of some sort. But Javonte Williams is going to be involved as a runner, as a receiver. He's their primary back. After he was in the doghouse in May, but he got out of it, and just he's their primary guy. So I like Williams quite a bit. Jerome Ford too. Dallas's run defense is awful. You saw what Aaron Jones did to them in the playoffs. So Ford is the primary back there. They really have no one else, and they have a top 5 offensive line. So we talk about how bad Deshaun Watson is, and I think the Browns coaching staff knows that. So I think they're going to want to feed the ball to Ford as much as possible. So those are 3 guys I like in the 5K range. You can maybe go to Chuba Hubbard if you want. It's a little bit cheaper, but I like the other guys more. Who do you like here in the 5K range?
Well, first I'm going to ask you a question, and I'll tell you some thoughts here as well. Who would you rank as like top 5 or somewhere around that range for offensive lines here this year?
Okay. So let me look at the team.
I think I asked you that one. I think I asked you that one the few times that I was drafting here as well. So I'm trying to remember that.
So I would put the Eagles up there for sure. I know they lost Jason Kelsey, but they've been drafting replacements. So I think the Eagles have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. I think who did I say before? The Browns are certainly up there. Especially with Jack Conklin now healthy. Detroit might have the best offensive line in the NFL. So you have to consider them for sure in the top 5, but they might be number 1 overall. The Colts, they don't have any weaknesses up front. I think they're awesome. So those are 4. As far as the 5th, kind of have to. I don't know. I'd love to pick Jacob's brain because Jacob actually ranks all the offensive linemen. Actually, he might actually have that up on Sporting News, but. The 5th offensive line. If you guys have any, the Cardinals might be up there. I think the Cardinals are very underrated on the offensive line. I don't know if they're quite number 5, but they're definitely in the top half of the NFL. Who else could be? If the Rams are healthy, but Alaric Jackson is suspended. If he were not suspended, I think you could maybe talk about the Rams. But yeah, if you guys have any thoughts in the comments, but I give you my top 4. So
yeah, we got some comments up here.
Let's see. As John says, Detroit, Philly, Green Bay. Oh yeah, Green Bay. Okay, Chargers. Well, maybe the Chargers, but Joe Alt, we don't know how he's going to play. The interior is a little shaky, but yeah, I agree with the rest of the list. Chiefs, the interior for sure. I wonder about the tackles, like the tackle play. Like, how is that going to work? They have if Kingsley Sumataya does Suma Ita. I don't know. Like, I always pronounce that wrong. If he can live up to the hype, then I think you might be onto something with the Chiefs. I just worry about the left tackle, but the rest of that line for sure. And then Jets, until Tyron Smith gets hurt in like the second quarter.
I was going to say that. I was going to say Green Bay until they have their lingering injuries that they have every single year.
Green Bay, they tend to get hurt a lot. Although Bakhtiari is not there anymore, so you don't have to worry about that. So anyway, so I answered your question. So who do you like here?
Well, I do like Chuba Hubbard, even though he's going to be very, very chalky as well. Again, I'm not worried about ownership when it comes to running back, but he was like a cowbell last year on that offense. So I mean, if he with that production, I mean, it's hard with that production, and he's only 5,300. I mean, that's almost like a free square at that point. So it's hard to wanting to fade Chuba Hubbard at that point.
Sumataya, yes. Thank you, Bagley. I always call it Sumataya, and then I know that there's an at the end, and then I always screw it up. So thank you, Bagley.
It's everyone always pronouncing my last name wrong. So,
well, I don't know. I don't know if you want to make that public. So I was about to say it. I was like, wait, it's not here. Well, my name Charpinski is. They always forget the second E in Charpinski. They always call me Chirpinski. But funnily enough, I was humble brag from like 25 years ago. I won the 100-yard breaststroke for the Philadelphia Public League Championship, and I was so excited because the Philadelphia Daily News and the Philadelphia Inquirer were going to publish my name in it, and they called me Wilt Charpinski, not Walt. So I like Wilt Chamberlain. Well, I'm Wilt Charpinski. So yeah. I was so excited, and then they screwed my name up. Thank you. It was one of the newspapers, not both, but So I was a 17-year-old with a lot of optimism, and they crushed my dreams. So John Sanders says Joe Alt is the best offensive lineman name. Yeah, I would go with Delmar Glaze personally. I think that's outstanding. Baggett says, I started reading about these guys months in advance, and then I caught off guard when their name gets announced. So hard for me to correct myself. Yeah, it is rough if you've been saying it wrong for a while. You're right.
Speaking of last names, did you see that? I think it was Michigan State. Didn't you see there was a
Carson
guy?
Wentz.
Yes, last name Carson Wentz. I was like,
yes.
Oh my gosh, he should have just transferred to NDSU. Just be like,
yes.
Yep, I'm here.
Carson Wentz back in North Dakota State.
So hilarious.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else you like in the 5K range? You said
okay. So I said
Hubbard. So real quick on Hubbard, you're right about him being a bell cow. I'm in a fantasy league that gets a 0.25 point per carry, and so I did like a lot of digging into who got most carries last year. Hubbard was 9th in carries, so yeah, he's gonna get the ball a lot. So anyway, who else do you like?
You also have another option. I mean, you did mention Tony Pollard. I mean, you could also consider Tajay Spears down there as well for 5,100, just in case like you have those feelings as well between the two. Let's see here. I have zero interest in Pittsburgh running backs unless maybe Cordell Patterson, because now you're going to have Arthur Smith out there. That's probably going to like throw him out there as they're going to name him probably the starter for right away and mess with everyone right away. So
yep.
I kind of like Zach Moss in this case. I kind of like Zach Moss in a game where Bengals may not even need to show up to win that game. So I mean, maybe they just want to throw Zach Moss out there and just give him a career game like he had with with the Colts. So who knows? Maybe they might want to ease the offense and just throw Zach Moss out there and again be up 28-0 by halftime. So who knows? Let's see here. I kind of like Gus Edwards a little bit with the Chargers because I mean you've got some issues. You got some issues with what's going to happen at quarterback, so maybe they're going to lean more on the run game for game or for the first game. So that's kind of who I see here at 5K. I guess you can go to Chase Brown as well too. Like if you think that again that they're going to be up and start pulling the starters, maybe you want to Galaxy Brain Chase Brown in the second half sort of thing. So that's kind of my opinion in the 5Ks.
Looks like Flat Top from Dick Tracy, Chase Brown. That's very, very
strange. Oh, you're right.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's very uncanny. Anyway, tight end. My philosophy of tight end is you either play the top guys or you play dirt cheap 3K or less. Because the guys in the middle, they can do fine, but the guys at the top can produce like the games we saw from McBride last year. We saw 23, 22, like 24. The guys in the middle can never do that. So I either go for the upside or, just pay down and just hope the guy catches a touchdown or gets like 30 yards, 3 catches, 30 yards, gets 6-7 points at, 3K. That's okay. So that's what I like to do. So looking at McBride's is a fine matchup against the Bills, missing Milano. Kincaid, I think, is going to have a monster year, kind of like Kelsey in 2022, because the Bills lost everyone at receiver. Although Curtis Samuel being healthy kind of hurts that a little bit. Njoku's okay. Ingram is the one I'm really looking at. He caught 2 touchdowns in the preseason game, which is significant because this guy only caught 4 all year last year. Hasn't been a big touchdown producer, but if Calvin Ridley's gone, like maybe they have different plans for him in the red zone. So maybe he's suddenly going to have a decent touchdown season. So plus he's a PPR guy. Like he was 4th in catches last year, like period, and not just tight ends and among receivers too. Like 10 here, 10 here, 11 here. So that's a PPR monster. So the fact that he's not the cheapest tight end, whereas like he could easily be the high scoring tight end, makes me interested in him. I'm going to be if I'm playing that Miami stack, I'm going to run it back with Ingram. What do you think?
I actually do like Evan Ingram a lot there as well, because that was kind of another reason why I was picking your brain about blitzing from Miami, because it seemed like a couple of years ago, whenever Miami kept on blitzing, you just play. I go back and when it was Baltimore versus Miami, and I think it was like a Monday night game, and it was your best matchup was just playing quarterbacks with a rushing ability, hence Lamar, and tight ends, because there just seemed to be that matchup was just solid for them. So if there's going to be, for instance, like if there's going to be a lot of blitzing, then I have interest then in Ingram, just for that dumb theory. You were also a couple of years ago above the public, or before the public, with some injuries that happened with the Chargers, where they had some holes in the defense. And you can exploit tight ends against them. I couldn't remember what injury that was, but for a couple of weeks, no one was seeing that except for you. And I just kept on, from everything you were writing up on against the spread, I just kept on playing tight ends versus the Chargers at that point. So I was trying to see if you thought of any other holes that maybe some offense or some defenses could be like a tight end funnel.
Well, I think there are not too many injuries right now. Plus, we don't have the full injury report yet. So definitely stay tuned for that. I'll talk about it on the picks page come Saturday. Okay. But the one injury that really stands out is Milano being out for the Bills. And plus, as John said, they have a zombie starting at safety. So the middle of the field can easily be attacked. And so I think McBride could have a monster game.
If he's not going to be owned, and a lot of people want, well, he's going to be moderately owned, but I mean, if people want to jam in both CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill, I mean, you're not going to be able to play McBride then in those sorts of lineups. So I mean, if that happens to lower his ownership, I'll sign me up. I'll play McBride all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Njoku seemed to be kind of a focal point last year as well on that Browns team. Now, granted, that also may have been kind of inflated because Flacco was under center as well, but you definitely saw a very high ceiling with Njoku. So I don't mind any of these higher priced tight ends actually, even like Jake Ferguson. I mean, if it's not CD, it's probably Jake Ferguson catching the ball on that offense.
Yeah. So those are the top guys. I don't mind Freiermuth either. I think he's okay. I just don't trust Arthur Smith. So I'd rather.
Is it too early for Brock Bowers?
Well, he's banged up. I don't know what this injury is. He was limited with a foot. So if he's out, I obviously you have to look at Michael Mayer. And the Chargers don't have.
It's not October yet, so you can't play So you can't play the scaries yet.
Yeah. Well, I think there are some guys down here I don't mind. So there are 3 guys in the 3K range I was looking at. Let's go back to tight ends. So at 3,500, Jonnu Smith playing for Miami. This is another way to maybe get different in the Dolphins game here. He's going to be the main tight end in this offense. So he could have at 3,500 if he gets this total here, 11.9. You're going to be very happy with that. So I like that I like that. In addition to Jonnu Smith, I like Josh Oliver at 3,300. Hawkinson's out. The Giants can be beaten over the middle of the field. They lost their top safety, Xavier McKinney. So Oliver, I think, is an okay play. And then 3K range, especially if Jamar Chase is not playing. Mike Gesicki, the Bengals haven't had a good tight end for a while. They lost Tyler Boyd, so I think Gesicki could kind of fill that role.
Wasn't Drew Sample named as a starter though?
Drew Sample's a blocking tight end.
I thought he was named as a starter though.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at that chart. It says Gesicki at the top, and then Sample. I mean, Sample is going to be the blocking tight end. Gesicki is going to be the receiving tight end. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. So, like I said, only if Chase is out, the targets will be more consolidated. So you can look at Gesicki, but I'm going to be playing either McBride or Ingram. Personally, I just think that their upside of getting 20 plus is just too hard to ignore. And there are good 3K options at receivers. So it's not like you have to just kind of scrape the bottom of the barrel here because you have to play higher price guys at other positions. So any cheap tight ends you're looking at?
I have some interest in Theo Johnson, but I don't know how much he's going to play because maybe the Giants are going to play more Bellinger.
Yeah.
So he was awesome at the combine. So, I mean, he's cheap, and I mean, just his potential, but just is he going to be on the field? I mean, you're not going to score any points if you're not on the field. So that's kind of a asterisk question mark in that sort of offense as well. So if you're going that low, I wouldn't mind him playing as a dart throw there at that point, but there's definitely some risks there. Let's see here. In like the 3K ranges, man, there's so many Patriots, and it's just they all just seem to fester around like 3K, and they're all just bad. I guess Gerald Everett. I mean, if people are going to play Caleb Williams and wanting to go after their wide receivers, I mean, there's still Jarrett Everett. I mean, he scored some touchdowns and everything in the past as well, so he could be a name that kind of shows up. But again, you also have Cole Kmet out at 4,100. So I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, Cade Otton for a while was every once in a while kind of showed up. So tight end's kind of hard this week.
Yeah, that's why I would play the top guys. John says the heat index is going to be 150 degrees on the Jags sidelines. Be careful. Yeah, I think you can run it back with one Jaguar though. I think that there could be a lot of scoring in the second half, especially if the defenses are tired. Cassandra says, I remember when everyone was talking about Tua possibly going early in the draft, and I thought, crap, now I have to learn to say his name. Same with Wemby. Well, as someone who writes about sports, football, you have to know how to spell these guys' names. So I tend to just in my head, just kind of say their names as if how they're spelled. Like when Ben Roethlisberger first came to the NFL, like a long time ago, it's like I always thought in my head like Ben Roethlisberger, just because there's an O-R-O-E. And so same thing with like Tua. Like for some reason they pronounce an N in his name and his last name, even though there's not one. So I just kind of like in my head just kind of pronounce it how it's spelled. Sue says maybe the Jaguars owner will help his players, those little AA batteries, help fans to beat the sweltering heat. Yeah, maybe that could be a way to beat it. So, all right. So defenses, I think there's just one obvious choice. Nuggets gave it to us a couple of weeks ago, which is the Bengals against the Patriots. Bengals have this great matchup against the New England defense or New England offensive line. Is probably the worst in the NFL. And then if you're going to target bad offensive lines, the Saints, like I said, terrible offensive lines. So you can go very expensive with the Bengals. You can go very cheap with the Panthers. Bengals have better personnel on the side of the ball, especially with the edge rush. But the Panthers do have some very talented linebackers and some good players at other positions, namely like Derek Brown, for example. A couple other defenses I like are in the middle here. And they're both 2,800. I mentioned the Titans as maybe having a top 5 defense this year. They play against a rookie quarterback, so very appealing. And then the other defense I love is the Raiders. The Raiders had the number 7 defense last year. They added Christian Wilkins, and they're playing against the Charger line that hasn't gelled yet. They have a rookie right tackle. We don't know how he's going to play. The interior blocking I don't think is very good. So I think the Raiders defensive line could dominate this game. So I'm looking at those 4 defenses. Who do you like on defense?
So is that more or less than 63 points again for the Raiders?
I think like I said, I think this is gonna be the opposite. I think this is gonna be like a 13-10 grinder, especially with like Herbert injured. You have a new quarterback for the Raiders. Both offensive lines in flux. New coaching staffs, really. I mean, I know Pierce is coming back, but he hasn't coached the whole year. Harbaugh coaching his first game. I think like there's gonna be a lot of like just kind of figuring out what's going on here in this game, and a lot of defense, a lot of pass rush, a lot of great pass rushers in this game. Between Crosby and Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, Wilkins in the interior, like there's so much good defense in this game. I just think this could be like 9-6. It could be an ugly defensive battle, which I actually love watching. So, what do you like here?
See, I always kind of like living in this range between like 2,800 to like 32, 33 range, just because like I always feel like there's like some sort of like low, like 5% or less owned defense that no one plays, that just like all they do is they just are able to get like a pick 6 and just like dominate. And if you find that one, you could just set yourself up different than everyone else without even changing much of your lineup. So like I'm always looking for like these low ones, like what would happen if like the Dolphins would go out and just, so even though it's such like everyone is saying it's going to be such a high scoring game, what happens if it ends up to be like a 9 to 10 game? I mean, it's certainly possible. Probably a very low percentage that can happen, but what if they do spike a couple defensive touchdowns and just kind of scare everyone? Then you're already destroying half the field because everyone's on that game, sort of thing. So I mean, kind of a game theory aspect of it.
Yeah.
You've already said the Raiders, and I was also interested in the Raiders as well. Texans could be a good option too if everyone's playing Richardson. What would happen if the Texans kind of come out and just shut them down? I mean, that could certainly be an option too. Again, that obvious play is the Bengals up on top. But I mean, where else are you going to kind of pivot around that? I mean, Cowboys really did show up last year, but they're a whole different defense this year. Let's see. Is there anyone?
If you're looking at like top defenses to pivot off Bengals, if they're super chalky, I don't know what the ownership is for defenses, but I guess the obvious choice is Seahawks, just because they play against Bo Nix, rookie quarterback. Although Nix is a check down machine, so I don't know how many mistakes he's going to make. I really it's really Bengals or bust for me at defense. Either Bengals or just go cheaper. Like I said, 2,800 or less. So my recommendation for defenses, if you have ownership, is to kind of like figure out who you're like, make a list of like top 4 or 5 defenses you have for the week, and then look at ownership and just pick the lowest owned one. Just because defense, there's so much variance in defense. Talk about receiver, like defense has the highest variance of any position here. I kind of wish the DraftKings and FanDuel would stop with defenses, just because like there's already enough variance in football with touchdowns scored. Like why even add more? I'd rather them have another flex here instead. So that's my strategy. Just look at ownership, find the cheapest good defense, or not cheapest, the lowest owned good defense you like. So that's what I have to say here.
Don't pick the Patriots defense. Then don't pick the Patriots defense. I mean, there was some sort of logic to that one time where it was like, wasn't last year that Arizona was projected to be the worst team, and then they weren't even the number one draft, and then they weren't even even the worst team, and they like scored like 1 or 2 touchdowns on defense and just surprised everyone, sort of thing. Like things can happen. Like you could even just play a defense. What was it when I can't remember his name. The Tampa Bay, back when he was at Tampa Bay, the Florida State guy. It wasn't not Florida State. It was he's backup at the Browns now.
Oh, Jameis Winston.
Yeah, Jameis Winston. Yeah, you could just play defenses against him, and then like because he's just gonna keep throwing it out there. So I mean, that's what kind of like makes sense. Like with the Bengals, where like you could probably even play like a Jacoby Brissett and the Bengals defense, just because like he's still gonna keep throwing it out there, but Bengals might just keep getting a couple touchdowns. Their defense might just be getting kind of a couple touchdowns, and then just do that sort of thing.
Man, that's like at least like with Winston, he had what made that work was that he had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. You know, Brissett has nothing there. There's nothing that he has to work with. So I don't know. I like if he's playing against a bad defense where they still get their pick sixes and he can throw well. I think that whole team is going to be dysfunctional this year. It wouldn't shock me at all if they go like 1-16, just absolutely awful. And then Bagley says Patriots defense is complete dog piss. It's only going to be worse without Belichick there. Yeah, think about it this way: like the Patriots last year won just like 4 games last year, and that was with the greatest coach in our era. Like, and now he's gone, and they have a rookie head coach. Like, and they lost Matthew Judon. Like how bad could they possibly be? I don't understand how anyone could even think about taking the over win total there.
Maybe the Steelers might be a good defensive play because their defense is healthy again. Watt is healthy.
Yeah, and they Patrick Queen. Yeah, they certainly have some good things going for them, and they also have the knowledge that, like, as much as we like to make fun of him, Arthur Smith does have knowledge of the Falcons. Now it could be misguided that, like, he thought that Bijan shouldn't get touches, so maybe they shouldn't listen to him, but he does know their personnel somewhat, I guess. So that could be he could be talking to the defense coordinator there and helping him maybe. But again, I don't know if I'd pay attention to him. Cassandra says Seahawks are who I drafted in all my real fantasy leagues. They look good until Uchenna Nwosu got hurt. So that was a big loss for them, unfortunately. Sue says Cale Williams has the potential to be your Jameis Winston of days of old. That would be interesting. Maybe stack Williams. Maybe do that. Play Titans defense and Caleb Williams with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. I think that'd be interesting.
I was actually just considering like the Bears defense for a little bit, just because like wasn't the Bears defense pretty consistent with being pretty stout last year, and it was just kind of surprised everyone. It was late half of the year.
Yeah, they several ever since they got Montez Sweat, they had several double-digit performances. Yeah, I think you can play the Bears. I don't think they're bad. They're bad, but maybe they're the pivot that you want off the Bengals. Johnson's 30 for 30, my favorite backward quarterback in the NFL. that was an amazing season. I did do the Winston special where you stack Winston with Evans and Godwin and play the opposing defense. It was magical. All right, so that is it for the main slate. I think do you have a little bit longer to talk about any showdown slate? I feel like we don't have that much longer, but
yeah, we could talk about that.
So, I mean, Ravens Chiefs, real quick. I talked about there's $1 million the first year. You guys can just screenshot my lineups there.
Is there $1 million the first on Friday as well?
They didn't have the Friday slate last night when I looked at this. I don't know. Do they even have the slate available now? They do now. Yes, they do. It's $1 million the first.
Oh, geez. So, my goodness.
Yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of $1 million the first. Hopefully, someone here wins something. Anything on either slate. I get this is the first time I'm seeing the pricing here, so I don't know how much I have to say about the slate yet. So I'm going to dig into it more tonight. So what are your thoughts on either slate? Any leans there?
I mean, I kind of looked at last year where it was Chiefs versus the Lions and saw that it was, what was it? It was Mahomes at captain, and then Blake Bell, I think, was the guy, and then four Lions. So I mean, I think it was still pretty duplicated too, but it was you found your pivot off of Kelsey, but was Kelsey hurt that game, or was I couldn't remember.
He was out for that first game.
Okay, so yeah, then Blake Bell was your pivot off of who was the other tight end that they have? Noah Gray. That's what it was. Yeah. So you just played your tight end 2 in that game. I actually don't mind kind of thinking about like what if Baltimore kind of comes out defensively, and what if you put Ravens defense at captain? I feel like
something I don't like to do is put defense or kicker at captain. I feel like it's just very low probability of that working, and especially against Mahomes too. I don't know. But then again, no one's going to do this. So that is a way to get different in a field with how many people, 196,000 people. So yeah, you do have to get different here if you want to win something significant. Like if you win, you don't want to chop with like 800 people. It just sucks.
Right. Like a Mark Andrews captain would be different than playing a quarterback captain, or you'd even try to get different. Think like maybe P. Ryan is going to be the McKinnon this year on the Chiefs offense or something of that sort. Because I know you're really high on Pacheco, but what if you play P. Ryan instead of Pacheco in that case, and think that's kind of what happens. It's when it's a single game, a lot of things could happen.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. I mean, it's crazy to think that just someone falling into the end zone could do the trick. I talked about Isaiah Likely before. John Harbaugh, who is, I talked about this with Kenny before, where, sometimes when coaches say stuff, you just have to ignore it. But I always wanted to know, what is every coach's truth meter? Because some coaches tell the truth way more than others. And John Harbaugh is one of the more truthful guys out there. Like what he says is generally what he does. And he said a couple of months ago that Isaiah Likely was going to be really involved in the offense, which you could maybe predict because the receiving core outside of Zay Flowers is just not that good. Like Bateman has been a huge disappointment. Who else? They like Tylan Wallace, who just kind of sucks. Who's the other receiver they have there? Off the top of my head. Nelson Aguilar. He's just another guy. So likely could be more involved. He's only 2,600. I think he's interesting. He's in one of my lineups. Juju Smith-Schuster made it into a lineup of mine at $1,000. Now I know he's kind of like the direct backup behind Rashee Rice. He plays the slot, but the Chiefs are missing Marquise Brown, so maybe they move him around or something. They did sign him back, so I think that's interesting. You can always go with the Chiefs tight end like Noah Gray or something, or you mentioned Pirine. Justin Watson is somewhat interesting because he's 3,200, so he's not that cheap. But he could be the guy who takes Brown's place and catches a touchdown. So
yeah, there's always one guy on the Chiefs that's like out there for like 2 or 3 plays just to go deep, and then Patrick Mahomes will always just like take a shot.
Yeah, that's for sure. But the one thing I would not do is what you said. Don't play quarterback at captain because that's what most people are going to do. Now, it could be if you're playing cash, maybe it's optimal to play Lamar Jackson at captain, but and maybe he's going to be the most likely captain to win. But you have to kind of consider the ownership in that case. And I feel like every noob is going to be like, oh, start Lamar Jackson at captain. Like that's what they're going to do. So I would avoid that. Although it would be hard to get away from Jackson in the flex. Like I can't imagine him not being in the optimal flex. It's almost like a free square. Like you put Jackson there unless he gets hurt, and then you kind of have to figure out the other 5 spots. So
it'll be really interesting what the Ravens will do. Like, do they just like ground and pound, like progress, like ground and pound for like 70% of their offense? Because I mean, they really could. Like maybe they just play 2 tight end lineups or 2 tight end line sets all the time, and then just go with the option all the time. I mean, it's certainly possible, and just kind of go with that kind of college ball mentality sort of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, Kansas City is weaker against the run than the pass, but then you have to ask yourself, like, do you think the Ravens are going to be ahead? And if so, yeah, maybe Henry's the way to go. And then you play Tucker because you don't want to play the losing kicker because if the team's trailing, they're not going to kick field goals.
I mean, that is one way to beat Mahomes, just get the ball out of his hands.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. I am not super narrative based, but Mahomes was voted as the number 2 quarterback in the NFL behind Jackson. So I think he's going to go off in this game. I personally think the best play on the slate relative to salary is Rashee Rice. Just because the Ravens don't have a very good secondary. They have some older cornerbacks, just not nearly as good as they used to be there. And right without Marquise Brown there, I think Rice is just going to feast over the middle of the field in the slot. He's the one guy in the receiving core with experience. He was Xavier Worthy too. It's a little cheaper here at was he like 5,300? 5,800. So he's not like the difference between Rice and Worthy salary wise is not that substantial. Rice is cheaper than Flowers. I like him more than Flowers. I do like Pacheco quite a bit too, but to me, if I'm playing a captain, I'm playing Rice a captain. Although you guys could have screenshot my lineups, which please don't copy my lineups because then it could get into trouble. Because what happens is if you're a content creator and you put out a lineup and like everyone copies it, then you get in trouble. So if you copy my lineup, make sure there's one change at least. John says captain Mahomes, Pacheco and Rice, Lamar, Justice Hill likely. Yeah, I mean, if you captain Mahomes, you have to pair him with a couple guys there. So you do a Pacheco and Rice, so you're hoping he throws touchdowns to those guys. Lamar's a given. And then I'm not a big Hill guy, but yeah, if you're talking about like super low on guys, like Noah's going to play Hill. So I think that you might be on something there. Bagley says, I wonder if truthfulness correlates with their preseason record. That's interesting. That's very interesting. I wonder if it does. That could be the case. John says maybe play Fields after Tomlin witnesses one series under Wilson. That would be that would be the definition of don't go full contrarian. But
Galaxy, you're Galaxy brain that.
If you're playing the one game showdown that they have, it's usually like 5K to first. Then I don't think that's like not too crazy, but there are just way too many good options. It's not like Fields is $0,
I would rather play Taysom Hill because at least like you could throw him in that tight end, and then like if they just like pull Carr, they do like Taysom like Taysom was even like lining up as a fullback. So I mean they are wanting to do something with it. They still have something going on with him. So I mean that would be a better option, I would say, than trying to Galaxy Brain playing Fields right now.
Yeah. Yeah. You can always play Hill. He's always like hit or miss, kind of like Gabe Davis. So, all right. So as far as Eagles Packers, I think I want to save that for tomorrow's show, just because I remember Tom, who's going to be on tomorrow's show, wanted to talk about that specifically. So, and plus I haven't looked at the slate yet, so I don't know if I have any insights tonight, but I will tomorrow. So yeah, that's our DraftKings breakdown for week 1 plus Chiefs Ravens showdown. I truly hope someone listening here wins $1 million. So good luck to everyone playing. But yeah, otherwise, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. All that would be appreciated. Butters, thank you so much for joining me. Kenny couldn't make it on tonight. He had a work conflict, so just really appreciate you filling in. Do you have anything to plug? Maybe your Twitter handle or something like that?
If you want to follow me on Twitter, or X is what they call it now, it's Butters326 DFS. And then one other thing I just want to say too, again, like if you're playing these million makers, just realize like it literally is a lottery ticket, so you need to play it that way. Like if you're playing, like look at the size of the field that you're playing. Like if you're playing like 100 people, okay, you can play more chalky players. But if you're playing like these millionaire makers, take a shot. Like play someone like in these like tomorrow night, like play a $200 salary play that might get you a touchdown, like for instance, like Blake Bell, like Bell did last year, or something of that sort, that maybe you might be able to get ahead of the game, sort of thing. But
maybe Carson Steele, another guy with Edwards Hilaire out. Maybe he's going to be the guy. So yeah, I totally agree with what you said. Take a shot. If you're playing in a field with a super large, you want to be contrarian. Don't be too contrarian though. Like don't make lineups that don't make sense. But take a shot. I completely agree. So yeah, follow Alex here at Butters326 DFS at Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, we'll be on tomorrow night with Tom breaking down. It's right after the Chiefs Ravens game. We'll be on Thursday thoughts on the week 1 picks plus Packers Eagles showdown. So we'll have a lot on tonight. I haven't been on with Tom since July, I think. So we'll have to see what he's been up to. So thank you guys once again for watching and commenting. Just really appreciate it. But yeah, and once again, thank you, Alex, for filling in for Kenny. So we'll be back tomorrow night, and guys, have a fun time watching Chiefs Ravens. Football's back. It's exciting. So I will talk to you tomorrow.